that matters on the chessboard are good moves and the actions you take to achieve this result. What I do is bide in the shadows, where I can strategically exploit the most vulnerable pawns. But this time had to be different. This time, I had to involve my hand directly. But let's get things in the right order. So I began the first phase of my plan.
Requesting the evacuation of all remaining personnel. Code Blue, repeat, this is a Code Blue emergency. Please respond, anyone, please. My name is Rebecca Jordan. I'm a doctor at the Aegis Medical Facility on the North Ball Islands. We have a problem of some magnitude here. There's a situation in the building that requires... There's been a terrible mishap. I think we've been exposed to some kind of gas, a corrosive agent that latches onto the lungs, warping people inside. Can anyone hear me? For God's sake, please!
I don't make it much of a secret that I am nostalgic about horror games of the 90s. Many iconic game series that have this genre have a very distinct tone that makes it identifiable. Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Alone in the Dark, and many others came from this special point in time. Honestly, I really do miss this time. So many games that I hold dear came from this time, and I'm pretty sad to know that those times have passed on. Maybe it's for the better, but I can't help but wish for those times to come back. And so here we go. You see, not too long ago we got Daymare, 1998, a third-person survival horror game made to be an homage to the horror games of the 90s. You know, I kind of like the idea, being a classic horror game of the day, but with some modern touch-ups. Oh boy. Here on Observation, we're going to look at the beginning and just see if this game truly delivers on what it promises to be. So I personally have not played this game to its entirety, but I didn't want to give this just a basic voiceover like I do when I do my impressions, but instead rather play the game, take a step back, and put together my initial thoughts. And with this game, I think you'll see why. So, just from the looks of this cutscene, I think you can see that this isn't really up to modern standards. I imagine this is intentional, made to kind of look sort of like a PS1 cutscene, but personally, I think some PS1 games actually from the 90s look better than this in some ways. I'll talk about that later. So instead of that, let's just get into what I know of the plot so far. Basically, a US government organization called Hexagon Corp... Well, doesn't this look familiar? I mean, come on, there is no way that was a coincidence. Man, am I supposed to expect, like, the love child of the Ed 209 and Mr. X or something now? Anyway, so HexCorp has a biological outbreak of some kind in one of their installations off the island of Washington State. The organization dispatches a team, HexCorp Advanced Division of Extraction and Search, or Hades, to see what has happened to the installation. Okay, so at the beginning, we play as a character named Liv, I don't know. Some Russian guy who follows orders down to the letter, no matter what is at stake, who may die, or what have you. Oh boy, a likable character. As previously stated, the game is a third-person survival horror, using a lot of similar traits from 90s horror games with an inventory of items and all that stuff. Solving puzzles, reading flavor tags, that whole gig. And that's about as 90s as it gets. Well, 90s as they did right anyway. Kinda. You see, while it has all that, it also has a system when using medical supplies, adding the possibility of overdosing, which I actually think is kind of an interesting idea. A much more realistic ammunition management system that's even more intricate than other modern games, and cutscenes from the gameplay is pretty seamless as well, but these factors are all kind of against the game's purpose. Okay, this is what I mean. For example, the handling of ammunition I mentioned. First off, bullets and magazines are two separate items in this game. They're not one and the same like they are in most games. Also, you have to manually reload the magazine in order for it to be used again. It's kind of similar to Resident Evil Outbreak in that regard, but it's a little more smoother in this game. So basically you can do a quick reload of ammunition or a slow reload. Quick reload will do just that, rapidly eject the magazine and pop in another one, if you have another one. Doing this, however, will cause you to drop the magazine, and you will lose all the unspent rounds in that magazine if you waited till that point. That said, you're allowed to pick up the magazine when it's safe, but no one's going to remind you if you happen to forget. Slow reloading is basically the normal reloading process that's used in many games. But that said, it's called slow reload for a reason. First, you have to hold the reload button a little longer, and we have a little timer in the corner. Then the character will finally casually eject the current magazine for the other. The benefit in doing this, however, is that he won't drop the mag, and it will still be in your inventory after the fact. So basically, this is a mix mash of modern horror, but with some 90s elements to it. The game's limited actions, e.g. no melee attack, and how most games are done through a systematic selection of menus is too archaic for a modern game, but simultaneously many elements of this game is too intricate to be a 90s game. And that's what this whole game feels like. It's like the developers couldn't decide to do a modern game that takes place in the 90s, or this is supposed to be a tribute to the 90s horror games. So basically you get this hybrid sort of, and personally I'm not impressed by either one. Even visually has a similar issue. Some of the in-game models look okay, but some of it looks low resolution. Same with the environments in many places. Some look fair enough, but a lot of it's also pixelated. I really can't tell if this was intentional, like it was supposed to be kind of like a PlayStation / N64 game where everything was pixelated but just at a higher resolution. I can't tell. That's not only that, but there are parts where the game will take a little bit too much time to render. Don't recall too many 90s games having that problem. So, with all of that out of the way, I just want to get this out there. As far as I can tell, headshots or body shots are relative, as one doesn't seem to be any more effective than the other. At least I couldn't tell. I did manage to get a trophy for making a bunch of headshots, all the good those did for the most part. But in all seriousness, only on occasion did this actually seem to make these things go down quicker or in one shot. Heck, I even used a whole mag on headshots and it didn't seem to be any more effective than shooting them in the body. Now I'm sure some of you are wondering what the actual plot is, you know, like how this all happened and all that stuff, and that's fair enough. So going through the flavor text, basically you see what's going on back during World War II was Japan developed this biological weapon to go against the United States because of the nuclear bombs dropped. Believing that any sense of morality was lost upon using such a weapon as the atomic bomb, they decided to attack with this dangerous bioweapon using a submarine to unleash this weapon upon Washington State. However, the sub never made it and it crashed into one of the offshore islands of the state. Eventually, while the military was researching the regenerating abilities of jellyfish, they found the sub and discovered the chemical agent as well. And I think it's pretty obvious what went on from there. There is more to the story, but if you've played Resident Evil and or seen RoboCop, you can figure out Hex Core and its relationship with its city, Keen Sight. So that's pretty much the setup. Gameplay wise, the only thing really worth looking into is the puzzles, really, and... Really? Oh, gee, what the freaking heck is Hex Core? Umbrella? OCP? InGen? Look guys, putting in references and things from the 90s media doesn't make your game any more 90s. A little reference here and there is one thing, but this game is loaded with references that it honestly feels like the developers were trying to convince themselves that they were making a 90s game. That said, the puzzles are actually appropriate, and as far as being a tribute is concerned, it's pretty solid. Same can be said with the voice work, actually.
Hey, you there! What? Is that you, Roland? Ain't you supposed to be crippled for life?
Don't let him get to you, kid. That shitbird squawks at anyone with a bigger stick. Which is pretty much everyone. Never should have pulled his ass out that fire back in Bloom in '94.
Thanks, Hayden. Understood, Major. Damn it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I should just let the past go.
Aside from the profanity, the voice work and dialogue feel enough like a 90s game. Mostly in the delivery, but with some modern tweaks here and there, and that doesn't actually bother me too much. Well, that's pretty much all I got for my first couple sits of this game. Well, I can say that Daymare 1998, well, not in my opinion anyway, delivered on what it was advertised to be. It does at the very least make me want to see what this game's got in the long run. Other than fake movie posters.
You hear the screeching of an